I'm going to record. So thank you everyone for coming. I'm going to give a quick intro to myself and Writing for Green, and very brief intro to Sam, and then hand things over to Sam for the bulk of the session. So my name is Aaron. I'm the founder of Writing for Green. I founded Writing for Green about 3 years ago, and our focus since that time has been almost exclusively working with frontline organizations, mostly environmental justice groups. And our initial mission was helping those groups get access to that large pipeline of Justice 40 money, which has since vanished into thin air. And we knew that window was not going to be open forever. We didn't know it was going to shut so quickly. We were very effective during that time. We have a couple folks here that have been part of our programs in the past. We've raised hundreds of millions of dollars, or helped our partners raise hundreds of millions of dollars. And overnight, as you all know, the paradigm has shifted. So DEI is basically now illegal. No one cares about environmental justice, or at least the government doesn't. And so everything has changed. And many of your groups, maybe all of your groups, we're all finding ourselves in a challenging place with the loss or expected loss of funding, federal funding, which is making foundation funding more competitive. And there's just so much uncertainty out there. And recognizing kind of the new moment that we're in, Writing for Green we've pivoted somewhat. We're still focused on capacity building for frontline groups, but we're no longer exclusively focused on raising money through grants. We're focused on kind of broader based things like building capacity to design effective programs, to start income generating programs, all types of things to help organizations like yours, small to mid-sized nonprofits, be more self-reliant, have more control of your future, and help you take some power back. And one of the ways that you can do that, which is a focus of our workshop today, which is just really going to give you a taste. We can't solve any problems in an hour, but we can kind of show you what the possibilities are, both kind of within yourselves and your own organizations, and those that we can help leverage as outside helpers to come in and help you with this stuff. Our focus today is on decision making and primarily financial decision making and budgeting, and some really concrete things that you can incorporate into your processes to help bring more certainty to your budget projections, to help you prioritize or set new priorities, or to prioritize things within your organization that align with your mission, so that you can not only do your work better, but you can be more efficient. You can sleep at night knowing that your organization can be sustained, or at least know what your situation is. Sam, who's going to be leading today's session, he's been with Writing for Green for 3 years, since the start. And for over 30 years, he has been leading small to mid-sized nonprofits that have been in transition, budgets of $400,000 to a couple $1 million. He's worked in mental health, public health, youth development, service learning, all kinds of sectors like that, including those. And he's done a tremendous job turning organizations around that were facing really challenging situations. And he's developed some great tools and strategies, some of which he's going to share with us today, and which we are leveraging at Writing for Green to help bring to you all and in a broader scale down the road. So I'm going to turn things over to Sam. We're going to go over some content today. Like I said, it's not going to help, it's not going to solve all your problems, but it's going to give you an overview of strategies that you can employ. It's going to give you an overview of the services that we can engage with you in to help improve your organizations kind of over a longer period of time. So Sam, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. You took a part of my thing, and you're still not going to sleep at night, but that's because of all the things you care about so deeply. This is one of the things that we all share in common. We care deeply about things. And so as Aaron said, my name is Sam Collins. We are intentionally skipping check-ins for the moment. We're going to quickly break into groups, and then we'll do a little check-in there. But we really decided we want to spend time sharing some content with you and hopefully engaging you in some conversations, so you see the type of approach we like to follow in this thing. As Aaron said, I have worked for 30 plus years, and as it turned out, I just ended up always getting the job that nobody wanted when an executive director left because of budget problems generally, or other existential problems, and had to figure out how to turn things around. So I'm not sure about Ken's excuse, but that's the reason I have no hair. It's been a great process though, and really I've picked up some skills around budgeting and making these difficult choices that I wanted to kind of give you a quick taste of today. So I'm gonna share my screen and start a slideshow, and we'll go through it and then get pretty quickly into a small group activity that it's something that I faced in an organization, and some of just a taste of some of the decisions we had to make. So let me see if I can figure this out. Okay, and I'll start the slideshow. Did that start the slideshow? Oh, no, there we go. Okay, so what I like to say first is budgets should be alive. We helped all these EP organizations try to apply for the big community change grant last year. And what we found out, or what I saw over and over again, is the budget being this thing that they created for each grant that they made. And my approach to grants and budgeting is that the budget should be the easiest thing that comes for each project. Each grant should be coming right out of your organizational budget. And if it's not, you have to question whether you're doing mission creep at this point, right? Like, your budget should be something that you set as part of an annual planning process, and your whole team should know about it. And then it becomes alive when you see an opportunity or things like that. But when you're creating a new budget at the beginning of each grant process, that to me already is a yellow or red flag to be aware of. Today we just did the welcome and intro. We're going to do a budget case study, as I said. We're going to talk about using percentages to determine income projections. If you're applying for 22 grants, how do you know how much you're going to get from those grants at the beginning of the year? And how can you kind of therefore create a budget for that year if you don't know how many of those 22 grants? I'm just going to give you a peek at something I've done, a tool that I've used effectively to be able to do that, and easily recreatable, but also we can bring some tools to that. And then just talk about the financial consultations that we're offering to get started. So again, this was a little bit about my experience. So we're just going to jump right into the two different topics that we're going to talk about today. And the first one is using your mission to make tough budget choices. In conflict resolution, what they always say to do is start with shared values. And what I would say to you is, if and when you're facing tough budget choices, right, especially right now, but at any time, you should start with your mission and desired impact, and make sure that's a shared value in your organization, whether you're discussing it with your staff or your board or your stakeholders. What is the most important thing to our mission? And that sometimes, and I might even say often, doesn't necessarily correspond with what you've gotten funding for, because sometimes we write grants to funders who have slightly different priorities, and that becomes a time of conversation and prioritization. And then the other piece is budgeting income before you know the outcome of the grants that you write.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay.
You said nothing was saved. Well,
Hi, Tanya. I think if you could mute yourself, please.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go over this case study really quickly. We're gonna jump right into it.
No, I'm saying.
You know what?
Yes.
I can mute her, I think. Hold on a
I
second.
got it. Okay. This, as I said, is an organization that I inherited, a really amazing organization. And basically, it was an organization, a year of service organization, that placed college graduates in a year of service with nonprofits who paid for the volunteers. And this organization was deeply committed to creating peace with justice, but not only through its programs, which were doing years of service, so that's incumbent in that, but also through its policies and practices internally. And because at the time I took it over, the economy was going really great, there were less graduates wanting to do a year of service. They wanted to just go in and get jobs. And so basically we needed $100,000 in funding cuts. And what we're going to do, we're going to go over these, the types of cuts that we could face and the practices and the costs of those practices. And then we're going to break into two groups and kind of discuss how are we going to make these cuts. So this organization would pay for transportation of all these college grads to and from the program, to make sure that cost of transportation was not a barrier to participation. And that had a cost of about $140,000 a year. There was DEI training for all participants at the national orientation for $35,000 a year. What we did was we had separate bank accounts in each of our program cities, and at locally owned and minority owned banks, to kind of make sure we were supporting those institutions as opposed to Chase and those kinds of things. We established mandatory board training for DEI. We had for each program site, we had a $35,000 cost. So we can save $35,000 just by cutting a program site. And we had an annual cost of a region, which was 3 sites, of being able to save about $135,000. So briefly, any questions about those programs? I hope you can see how each of them might have related to the organization's commitment to seeking peace with justice. So any questions about those before we break into groups?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Introduce myself either. I'm Ria Quinones. Thanks for doing
Hi,
this.
Ria.
Hey, do the annual costs for individual program sites roll into the program region costs?
Yes. So right, it's basically multiplying by 3, plus some other savings.
Okay.
So yeah. And these are all approximations, of course.
And I do have a question also.
Yeah, Ken, go ahead.
So is this all the information we're going to have, or do we get a little more information about goals and metrics that were maybe commitments that were made to someone?
So yeah, it's all the information, but I do want to, yeah, we can talk about, and hopefully you will talk about each of these. The one thing I'll say, and Aaron will, or I will answer some questions that you have, because that's what we hope that we get, is some questions, and then force you to make some answers before the 20 minutes is up. One thing about ending these sites is the first site, for example, in real life that I needed to cut because none of the college graduates, participants wanted to go to Detroit. And yet Detroit is a place which has faced a lot of issues regarding, people wanted to go to the Bay Area and Washington, D.C., but not Detroit. And so cutting that program was cutting a relationship, if we were to do it, was cutting a relationship that we had with stakeholders there, and also questioning, why are we cutting a program in a place that actually faces more peace with justice issues than some of the other more popular sites? And that also was true of when thinking about cutting a region. So with that, I'm gonna let you ask me or Aaron questions in our small groups. We'll have about 20 minutes to come up with the cuts and also why you justify the cuts. And there's no right answers. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to say, well, who would need DEI training for the board anyway? Or who would need, the question really is, in a bunch of things that we all care about, that we care about each of these things, we have to make some decisions here. We don't have money to pay for it otherwise. So we're forced to make the cuts. And the interesting thing is, what is the conversation and what are your rationales for each of them? All right, does that make sense to everybody? Okay, Aaron's gonna put us into rooms, and good luck.
So I made one room. So Sam, you'll just stay in this room, the main area.
Okay,
Half the group is gonna go to a breakout room. So it's actually one breakout room, but it will be two
Gotcha.
separate.
okay. Are you separating us?
Yeah, it's been done. So you all should see a little go to room that pops up.
And you're gonna go over to the other room, Aaron, or I am?
Yeah, yep, I'll go over.
Okay.
So when you see that, does that, I don't see
I
anyone.
think
again,
you're good. I think they're all over there except for
They are?
Deacon.
Oh, okay, good. I'll go.
I can never get rid of Aaron. Oh, there we go. Hi, everybody.
Hi, am I in this group, I'm assuming? Because I didn't go anywhere.
So it would be great to see people if we can, and to start
Yeah.
with a,
Sam, I
Aaron?
need the link. I need the link to the slide deck so I can show the choices.
oh, shoot. I'm not
Go
sure.
out of presentation mode and just send me the URL. Just make sure the permissions are set.
I'm just gonna send you the document itself, Aaron, via email, sorry.
All right.
Sorry, everybody. No, I don't want to do that. Okay, I'm going to stop my share for a second. And in the meantime, just, sing yourself a little ditty or something. I'll be right there.
I don't know why I couldn't see myself.
Goes to a room.
I don't know if there were introductions at the start of this. I came on late, but hi,
We're going to
everybody.
do that now. So I just wanted to make sure I could listen. I'm sorry. So we'll.
No problem.
But okay, why don't we start now, River, and you can go first. And why don't you share kind of who you are, where you are, what your organization is, and your favorite fruit.
I'd love to. I'm River. Hello. I'm in the Cuyama Valley in California, so it's about 2 hours north of LA, in the high desert, and I live and work for a land-based ecological restoration nonprofit called Quail Springs. So that's where I am. I've got very beautiful high desert all around me.
Nice.
And yeah, I'm excited to be here. We've experienced some funding cuts, so it's cool for me to be able to upskill in that realm. I'm the operations director. I'll actually be moving into a co-executive director role pretty soon. And I don't know what my favorite fruit is in general, but in this moment, I'm feeling very drawn to figs because they're just starting to grow in our greenhouse. And that is a really exciting part of the season.
Great, thank you. And Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I am standing in for Lisa Damrosch, who is our executive director at PCFFA, the Pacific Coast Federation of Fishing Associations. I work for PCFFA also, and I fish commercially out of San Francisco, which is, this is the umbrella organization for our fishing associations. My favorite food, I don't know.
Fruit, we were saying fruit, but.
Oh, my favorite fruit. I mean, I think this is kind of an unpopular opinion, but I actually don't really like fruit. It's too sweet. I saw River's like head snap back. But my kids like fruit. Figs. Figs are a hot hit over here too. You've got many, many thousands on the tree right now.
Great. Okay, Sarida.
So hi, everyone. I'm Sarida Nanyas James. I'm the CEO and founder for the Gulf Ridge Institute. So we do STEM education, we do health, connection to land and water, and then wrap all that in advocacy, but mostly focused on youth and our communities. And my favorite fruit has always been mangoes.
Great. Stella.
I'm sorry. Let's see if I can turn my camera on. Can you see me?
Yes.
All right, then. Hi, I'm Stella Tekizala, working fully remote out of Delaware, Lower Delaware. And I work for the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice as the fiscal manager. My favorite fruit probably is gonna be the mango also.
2 mangoes.
Yay,
All right, thank you. Tanya.
Oh, yeah.
Tanya, are you there? Okay, Yvonne, we'll go to Yvonne.
I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute.
Okay, no worries. Tanya, go
At
ahead.
at one point, I wasn't muted, and then the other. Sorry.
So who are you, Tanya?
My name is Tanja Wright, and I am with House of Tiny Steps. It's a nonprofit that I founded in 2012. I'm in the state of Louisiana.
Great. And what's your favorite fruit?
Watermelon.
Ah, there you go. All right, now Yvonne.
Hello, everyone. Sorry I was late. Yvonne White Maury. I am CEO and owner of Grant Stream Consulting LLC, but I work with Writing for Green as one of the coaches. And so I'm here to learn more about your wonderful organizations. I'm based in Illinois, but work remotely and work more specifically with environmental justice organization groups. I am so happy that some have already said. I've got 3, so excuse me, Sam, for being greedy, but mango, obviously. So yay, Stella and Serena. And I like watermelon. So yay, Tanja, and grapes. Those are kind of my top 3 if I was going to make a summer salad. So there you go. Okay.
All right, and I'm Sam. I've introduced myself and I want to get into this, but I love people who say I refuse to answer a favorite because people ask me those things all the time and I'm like, you know, I don't want to say what my favorite is, but many mangoes and watermelon are 2 of my ones I love, but I just love fruit. So there you go. All right, so let's jump into this. You know, we got to save $100,000 and there are passionate advocates for each of these things. How would you make your choices? Anybody want to offer up an opinion to start?
We may want to look at decreasing the number of participants if it's not tied up to some grant requirements. If they
Say
don't
that
have
again?
may want to think about decreasing the number of participants if it's not tied up to a minimum level of participant that needs to, if we already met our minimum.
Yeah,
we
so
can
it's a participant funded organization. So the cause of the cuts, because the nonprofits pay pay less than a staff person to have their volunteers there. And so the reasons we're making the cuts is because less participants are coming in, which means there's less money. So these are the choices. So I'm going to be strict about that, even though I wasn't strict about naming an actual favorite fruit or just one. And I think this is part of the problem is we just don't want to necessarily face this stuff sometimes. And we're going to have to.
I assume that you've already looked at the other side of the equation, which is that you can't increase your participation rates.
Absolutely. The number of people have gone down and down and down. The applications have come in. And so we will do that for the following year, but this is what we're looking at right now.
Can I ask a question, Sam?
Yeah, please.
When you're paying for transportation, is it that any participant can get placed in any region?
That's known. That's known, and the cost is kind of averaged across those all participants.
Yeah, I guess my question is whether it were possible to decrease transportation costs by keeping any regional, like keeping flights within small regions instead of flying people nationally?
Less possible because our orientation was in a place. So they have to go to that place and then they have to go to where they're placed and they have a lot of choice where they want to go. And then they get flown home at the end of the program.
Yeah,
So
that would maybe be my starting recommendation, would be to cut transportation costs and maybe try to focus on, instead of having one national orientation, having regional orientations for each program region, and just
Okay.
flying people in smaller areas.
Great, thank you. And what do you see as and anybody can jump in this, what do you see as the pros and cons of that? And what might be the objections to that organizationally? And again, there are no right answers here, except that you have to come up with $100,000.
yeah, it limits who
But
can apply.
go ahead, who said that?
It's the right, it limits who can apply.
Say that again?
Can you not hear me very well?
I can, I just missed you. I just missed
Oh, no, because like I said, my internet's like weird. I would just think that if I understood it correctly, River, is would that limit who could apply to the program? You know, I guess that would be it. And when you say
Oh, I see, you're asking River, right. And remember, the other piece is by decreasing that cost, you end up increasing costs for the national orientation because now you're hosting, I think there were 6 regions, and you now have to put the trainers in each of those regions, which means you now have to pay more for the DEI training because you have many different facilitators. Because there were costs associated with those things as well. So all of a sudden, we're losing the economies of scale of a national orientation at the same time. And I can't tell you exactly what those numbers were. And also, Sarita is saying you might be limiting the number of places you have.
I might have missed it, but is it the national orientation? Is it supposed to be in person, hybrid, virtual? Do you have those choices? Because that's if you make it a virtual instead of in person, or at least hybrid, that really
good.
gonna take care of the cost. But I don't know
That's
if it's a requirement.
Yeah, that's what
so
I was thinking.
funny that you say that, Stella, and I think that's today's reality. I did this in 2018 when that wasn't really it wasn't considered. So I think you're right. I think that's one place, and that's great thinking, is that we now are much more, and that also might fit into Rivers model, because the training costs don't get quadrupled or whatever, and all of those things. So that is a way to save a lot of transportation money, because we're not sending people to the national orientation and then to the program site, which is 2 legs. It's just going right to their site, where we also don't have to pay for the housing costs, because the housing is part of the program and they had housing in each of those sites. So that's those 2 taken together really solve a problem. How much we save? Let's make a guess at that, so you guys can have a number. I'm going to say 50,000. That gets you halfway there.
What? Well, it goes back to Sam, to the training. I would not want to cut DEI training, because I feel like when things like that happen, that's the first thing to go, is the stuff that we need. And that was my comment too about having it virtually. So I did have question of, when you say mandatory board DEI training, is that just the $10,000 coming for like the people training? Or, because I mean, that if anything was going to be virtual, it'd be like at least some DEI training, depending on how you do it. That could alleviate that cost. And then I also had questions on, why do you have separate bank accounts? I'm confused on 17 programs, and like, I'm confused. That's a lot of banks and a lot of programs.
I was equally confused.
Okay. I mean, that $15,000 may not seem a lot, but well, for us that it's small, it's a lot of money. But that's $15,000 if I have to. I feel like I'm doing this all the time, and probably too much, where I'm just like, just cut it.
Yeah, so the commitment was, I think, a really good idea in theory of supporting local businesses.
Mhm.
But for me, in this case, and looking at these things, the economies of scale you can get by having one bank account or one bank with access that, with online banking, which is also relatively new, was something that we jumped on right away. And it was a nice cherry on top of a sundae, but it was, to do that, but we just didn't have the capacity to do it. And there are times when something that seems like a good idea, and it's like, yeah, but it's keeping us from other things. And in this case, to be honest, it was the board DEI training. We had given up on the board DEI training in order to keep these banks. And it was like, no, we're not going to do that. So there you go. So let's just save that $15,000 too. Is that okay with everybody? Any objections to the separate bank accounts getting eliminated?
I do think it's important to support the minority-owned businesses. So if the primary bank account is in a minority-owned business, I think that would be preferable. In other words, not switching to some of the big corporate banking that may have questionable investments anyway, particularly in the environmental area.
So this is the crux of it right here. It's about choices. Your budget is about choices. You establish your priorities by the choices you make, and the priorities are set by the way you spend your time and your money. So my question is, Yvonne, you have to make a choice between these things. It's not, okay, no, we're just going to borrow $15,000 to do that and keep it all. Make the choices. So it's not that it's not a good idea. That's the point. That's what makes it hard. It's given these things, which do you cut?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with cutting. My concern is that you got to bank somewhere. So
Correct.
when you're selecting the bank or whatever bank
see.
is the one that prevails out of the decision, that it be specifically targeted to be a minority-owned bank
I see. Yeah,
with
yeah,
the
yeah. Okay,
capacity
great.
to handle the national requirements you have, as opposed to
Yes.
going to a Chase or something else. So
I understand. I think that's a great that answers, if I can figure out how to, it answers how do you justify the cuts made, right? Is that we still are trying to find a bank that can handle our national needs, but that fits within certain criteria. So thank you. Yeah. Okay, that gets us to, I said 50, that gets us to $65,000. And Sarita mentioned some other cuts, which is cheating a little bit because these were supposed to be numbers that were already done. But let's just cut 5,000 from the board training, which now this leaves us with 50, 65. We need another 25,000.
What about the sites? Do we have to have 3 sites?
Well, there's 17 sites and they each cost about $35,000. So
35,
that would
okay.
get us the rest of the way if we cut one site.
Mm,
And
Yeah.
then what are the considerations around that is we have relationships there, we have the service organizations there. What site do you choose? All of those things.
I mean, I think it
Sites.
would be, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I guess I was looking at the last bullet point that was saying that it's covering 3 sites, the annual cost for the region, and cut the number of, I guess, from 3 to 2, if it's not too drastic.
Right, so we
Or
had, I
group
think,
those
whatever,
region.
just to be clear, whatever 3 into 17 is roughly 5 regions. So it would be cutting one whole region of 3 cities would be 135,000 of savings. And cutting
yeah.
one city across the 17 would be a savings of $35,000 each. So you could do either. You could get all the costs by eliminating one region and keeping everything else as is. Or you could get the rest of the way towards your cuts with one city being cut.
It makes sense to go to the city because the region yeah, encompasses various cities, and it's gonna be devastating to just remove a region, a whole region.
So River, you had something you wanted to say. Thank you, Stella.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's a good place to look. And in terms of justifying cutting a region, I think you were saying you know, students don't want to go to Detroit, but they want to go to the Bay. But when I think about the Bay, I think about a place that has a lot of need for programming, but also that has a lot of resources. So I feel like the first thing I would do is look at the list of cities and try to think about which have either wealth or proximity to wealth, which have, you know, a glut of nonprofit programming already, and which could really use support and
So
don't have a lot of programming already.
yeah, you're honing in on one of the real philosophical questions, because these young students, former students, who were very strident in their demands of us for peace with justice, then said, we'll only go to the Bay Area because we want to be in the Bay Area, which is, you know, we won't go to Detroit. And that becomes another entire philosophical conversation. So this, you're really hitting on some of the key points. We have another part of this. So I want to just establish that we save $50,000 in transportation costs. We saved $15,000 from the bank accounts, so that was 65. We got $5,000 away from the board training. We were able to save that, and we cut one city, and that gets us to $105,000. Now, let's just think about other things that we consider as executive directors and directors. And this is the next piece of this, which is, well, you know what? We don't pay our people very well. And if we're into peace with justice, maybe we need to commit to better benefits and or better pay of our people who are so committed. So the organization wanted to, well, actually it was I wanted to, in this case, pay us better. And so we wanted $30,000. So now we need another $25,000 on top of our cuts. Or maybe not. Like, is it more important to make more cuts from that list to pay our people better? Or is it more important to do those things and keep our people not being paid quite as well? And if you do want to pay our people better, what further choices do you make? Any comments?
This is so something that I can relate to. I'm sure other people can too. Sorry, Yvonne, do you want to start?
No, go ahead, River. I'll chime in later.
Yeah, this is really something that's heavy on our minds at Quail Springs, is how much of our budget we allocate to staff and how much we allocate to our program participants, and trying to avoid that kind of nonprofit extractivism while also trying to provide the best service we can. And I don't know, maybe the place where I would start is, what are they being paid now? And also, who works here? You know, and who do we want to work here? What are our goals for our staff? And yeah, starting to balance, like, how much do our staff really need versus, and how much is going to make their lives livable and good, versus how much is given to program participants. Like, what is the difference in staffing between the bottom and top of the management hierarchy? And, you know, how do you, is it possible to raise only some people's salaries and make this lower? Is it possible to equalize salaries and save on costs that way? Yeah, I would maybe start there. It's a tough one.
Anybody else? Yvonne, you were going to say something?
Well, I just think that this is one of the philosophical questions or myths around being a nonprofit. I don't think nonprofit means poorly paid. I don't think it means having people work extraordinary hours doing a multitude of things and then not being compensated fairly for what they're doing, or even comparable to what their skills and talents might yield if they decided to do a for-profit job. So I would lean into actually, as far as the budget could be stretched in supporting paying staff a livable and just wage and whatever benefits that are associated with that, recognizing it will increase the cost and recognizing a lot of funders don't want to take care of overhead and those type of things. But I think if we don't advocate for the employees and the workers within the nonprofit sector, who will?
Right, thank you, Sarita. And I'm going to ask to be brief and move on to the next piece, but thank you. Sarita, go ahead.
I think I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, just the kind of the same things, because if you're looking at, you know, philosophy or whatever, where we need to make sure, because then I always think kind of long term, just really quick, because you're investing, and if you're not going to pay them, they're going to go, they're eventually will go somewhere. So all that time, then you're going to have, so it's like turnover, because we're not paying them what they're worth, even though we know we need to pay them. So creating that culture, I think, really does dictate that. And real life example, that's what I'm going through right now. If we get the funding from our other one, that would give me 2 years of my salary, but it's not necessarily too much. But I don't want to do like, oh, I'm just going to do 40,000 a year. That's not a livable wage for me. And I'm stepping down. Yes, I will get a pay cut, but it doesn't have to be so significant where I'm strapped now and stressed for that. But because I know having somebody in the position that is fully dedicated to doing something is an investment to grow this. So yeah. Going through this now.
Hey, Sam, I brought everyone back because we pretty much were done and we were running out of time. So
great. So one of the things that we were talking about, welcome back everybody, and we will ask some general thoughts, but there are no right answers here, right? We just got into that second piece, which was about staffing, and that just blew a few people's minds a little bit, I would say, because, you know, are we choosing programming or paying our staff appropriate wages? And and River brought up a lot of things around, there's so many different ways of thinking about paying wages, right? Like in the example that I had, we actually calculated cost of living in all the different places and established our salaries in that way. But that's just one way to do it. And then the question is, do we want to spend our time doing that or serving people, right? So there's no right answers here, but what we would do in working with you is help you think through these things in order to get the budget that works for your organization. All of that said, can we just have a couple people say what are some of the main takeaways you had from this a group? We don't have a time for a big debrief, but hopefully this got you thinking. Anybody want to jump in with any key takeaways?
Sam, I think you brought it up in the beginning when you said, you know, what is your mission? What is mission critical for that? And then what is the culture of your actual organization? Because in the end, that's what's going to matter too. Because if you're cutting people off left and right, nothing feels good. It all kind of snowballs. And so, but also understanding that you're going to have to cut things. Like there's been times that I'm just like, I don't want to, but it's going to have to go. Like, do we actually need that? Or we can address it in the next grant or whatever it is to go to the next one. So, but what is our mission, and are we meeting that with what we need to do? And if we're cutting that out, then there has to be other changes.
Right. Any other key takeaways? Thank you, Sarita.
Not attempting to speak for the whole group, but this is what I picked up, which was great conversation and topics. We spent a lot of time on the large number. Of course, there's a number that's a big target. We spent a lot of time talking about that. We talked about the concept of fairness and equity and who gets cut. You know, where does that cut? Is it only about performance of a particular site and group? Or is it about maintaining levels of opportunity for people in that area? Uh,
Yeah,
and those are the big ones I took away.
great. So again, I see someone wanting to jump in. I heard an expression the other day for the first time, and Sarita just reminded me of it, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And, basically, your culture is, you could have the best strategy in the world, but if your culture is a different way, it's, that you always have to take that into account. So culture and mission and figuring out the right mix for your organization. So I hope that was a good conversation and got you to understand a little bit about the way we would approach talking to you about all of these cuts that you might be facing. The other side of it, of course, is income. We need to look at, do you have the opportunity to raise more income? Is there a way to quickly improve your income, which is something that Writing for Green does really well? Or are there certain programs that aren't being funded while others are? And where do they fall in your prioritization? So this is another piece. And I said that I would talk briefly about how do you create a budget when, let's say, a third of your budget is grant writing that you don't know whether you're going to get the grants or not. And one of the things that I did with really great effect was, as I researched grants and talked to the funders and figured out how interested I thought they were in funding us, I created percentages. And I'm just going to share again with you a piece of a spreadsheet we've developed that in work with you all, we would engage in developing an organizational budget that is broken down by program. And I'll show you the broader spreadsheet in a minute. But this is part of the income section. And what we're basically saying is you might have a major donor campaign or donations to a specific program or many different corporate or foundation funders that you're writing to, a big federal grant, and all of these. You have a concert series that are your special events and an annual gala, right? And one of the things that we can do in order to create a budget that you can then use to implement for your year is by really being grounded in what's your probability of this goal of $80,000 for your major donor campaign. It's 60%. Let's budget $48,000. What is the probability of this LGL Corp that you've spoken to, that you've been invited to apply for $65,000? Well, you don't really know them very well, so 10%. And then the budget number becomes $6,500. And if you do this, in this particular example, there's a lot more committed than I might, but if these weren't all committed, you could say this one was 20%, this one was 30%, this one was 70%. And you would get corresponding numbers associated with each of those. And of course, you wouldn't get those corresponding numbers from each of those, but you'd hit one of them and get the full number from one of them and not get the other ones. And if you do a good job of being disciplined and not being overly optimistic, you can actually get yourself to a bottom line number. And if you see here, you have $1 million of potential funding. I wouldn't recommend that you would put in that whole $1 million of potential funding. You have $402,000 committed, and you have $650,000 of pending. And then after applying all of these percentages to the pending amounts, you have $390,000 that you can budget. Does that make sense as a way of guesstimating what you'll actually get?
793,000.
793,028, the total budgeted income, which is your committed amount plus the percentages applied to your pending amounts. So we would go through that with you, and or you can just do this if you know the grants you want to apply to, you know their priorities, and it also helps you say, well, if you're deciding which grants to write, you can use this number rather than this number to kind of decide, because this, it's a $65,000 possibility, but you're really thinking you're only going to get $6,500 out of it over time. So maybe the other ones that are less, that you have a higher rate percentage, you apply to those first. So it helps you also prioritize your time in grant writing. And so that's just a quick thing. Go ahead, Aaron.
I was going to say, if you're like me, you're looking at the probability column and you're being like, that's completely arbitrary. And it's true to some extent. It's not completely arbitrary. And this is a case where it pays to be a little bit pessimistic. Both Sam and I have done this type of exercise, using best guesstimates based on some information, qualitative information, some gut instinct, whatever, and we've come up pretty close. The point is that if you just assume you're going to get all your pending money, then you're going to have some major problems later on. Even if you have to put 10% for everything because you have no idea, then use 10%. Don't use 90%.
Right, and hopefully, we will teach you to treat your foundations like major donors, and so hopefully you've had a conversation. And if you do have a conversation and they say, well, those three things that you described to me, this is the one I'm interested in. And yeah, that's pretty cool. And I think I'd invite you to apply for a $25,000 grant. Well, that's one conversation. And I would be like, okay, I'm at 60 or 70% on that conversation. And if you find something that is totally aligned, totally perfect, it seems great, but you can't get in touch with them and you throw in the application blind, well, I would not go anywhere above 50%, and I might say 25% for that one. So this is something that I would apply, we would help you through thinking through these things, but also if you're going to follow this, follow Aaron's advice, right? Under promise, over deliver. And there's nothing wrong with all of a sudden getting surprised and having to hire up really quickly for a grant that you got. But there is something wrong with hiring up and starting to implement the program only to find the thing that you told your board was 90% didn't come through.
The other thing is that this is not a PDF like in your real life. This is a spreadsheet. So when you get that grant you don't expect, you're going to change that number from 10% to 100%. And it's going to change the calculus of everything. So when Sam said it's alive, like your budget is a living document, which you're going to update like 50 times during the year. That's okay. If you treat your budget as rigid, then that's when you kind of get stuck and maybe it's hard to make the decisions you need to make.
Right. And so quickly, just to show you this, in this spreadsheet that we have, you enter your organization here and your information here, and that including your program names, including your staffing names, and all of that ends up coming into a budget summary that lines up with federal funding. It allocates your indirect costs, so you know the fully loaded costs of your programs, including your allocations for indirect and fundraising. And it with the income, which also talks about restricted and unrestricted funding, which is hidden right now, just to show it to you. It gives you both what is allocated for this program versus what's unallocated that you can apply when you get certain of the grants that were restricted versus the grants that were unrestricted. So Sarida, you talked earlier about how do you get this unrestricted monies? Well, I would argue that you have some income streams that are unrestricted, and by being disciplined about where you apply to first and knowing where it goes, then you get a restricted grant that is within your budget, not some other special project, and that therefore frees up your unrestricted monies for your next priorities. And that's part of the strategy of building a really comprehensive budget. And so each of your different programs, here's the indirect cost, the fundraising, the after-school program, the healthy, you build out all of those, you assign percentages of staff, and then that comes up and really shows you what your plan is. Yes, Sarah.
I have a couple comments. One is that I love a good spreadsheet, and if it's possible to send around a template of that, that would actually be really helpful.
It's not probably possible. This is kind of our proprietary information, and it's going to be for the moment, I think, for our clients.
I see.
Because it really, it was a lot went into creating that. And we can't just share it completely for free. So sorry.
Well, that's fine. I had never thought of that method of doing it before, so I can recreate some of it, at least for myself. But the other comment I have is that it's a really excellent method as long as you have a lot of funding sources. If you only have one or two funding sources, then
Correct.
it's not really like, it doesn't really, like, the percentage method doesn't work so well if you have two or three funding sources, because it's really not a percentage of your success. It's really a yes or no. It's a binary.
And so I would say to that one is what Writing for Green is doing now is helping you to think about what other funding sources might be out there for you. And I do know in some of the circumstances, there's only a few in the circuit to consider. And so that's the other piece on that point is thinking about what your impact that is, and really prioritizing which impacts you need to focus on as an organization. Because you're right, if there's really only a universe of 3 funding sources and they're binary, then we would try to help you on that, number one, through earned income or other ways. And then secondly, where are you applying your money, and how do you adjust rapidly when you get a yes from one of those as opposed to a no? Any other comments and questions?
We have some questions in the chat. There's a question, how much does it cost? I think that
So, yeah.
to this package.
So we talked about, we think we can get you a new budget for you in this format, identify those pain points in terms of your budget cuts and or budget adds, and really assess where you are in terms of your fundraising and which fundraising sources you have in about a $3,000 investment by you. We think that that's about 16 to 20 hours of our time, and probably double that of your time, depending on how organized your finances are already. It could, and that's where it depends on where you are, how far we can get with you. And sometimes it might be, the other thing that I love to focus on is the financial statements, which then, help you to track how's it actually going, and in what programs, so that we can help you create dashboards organizationally, both for the impact you're producing, as well as how the fundraising's going, so you can share that with your board and with foundations and funders to really show them that you have this, you understand how much it costs per impact unit, and that this is what you're doing with your money. And that is going to resonate, especially with foundations.
So our goal with this workshop was twofold. I mean, obviously we do want to get more clients, but we wanted you to be able to walk away with something that you didn't have before, some ideas about a new approach that you could use, or an enhanced approach to effective budgeting in a way that's going to strengthen your organization. And if you are interested in engaging us for this package of services, which Santa mentioned, which all of our services also come with access to all of our online courses. So we have a fully self-directed grant writing training, which you would have access to as well. If you'd like to set up a time to talk more specifically about your organization, like a short consult and how this could help you, just put a little note in the chat and we will follow up with you. You can also email me directly through the original link that I sent to, and we can go from there. So, but this is, you know, obviously there's a lot to this. A lot you're probably capable of doing yourself. If you decide you would like or could benefit from outside help from people like us, we're here to help.
Yeah, and I will stay on for a little bit if people have questions, because we know it was rushed. You know, Aaron was like, please make people leave with some ideas that they could implement. And so we really tried to put the focus on that first. And I'm happy to stay for a while longer and answer some questions.
This has been very helpful for me. Sam, you and I, we worked on your class, and that was helpful too. And this is just a good follow on for me. So, but I have to jump off. I'll send you an update.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to hear what's going on, Ken.
Okay, thanks. Bye, y'all.
Anybody else have any comments, questions?
Thank you. That was super helpful. I'm kind of stayed quiet because I'm new to US Hawaii. I just started last week. So this is my second week.
Wow, congrats.
But it's kind of very exciting because I'm getting very familiar with Neon. And US Hawaii does have a pretty nice business model of generating income through service and our store with the salvage material. And we do have a pool of funding. So that is very exciting for me to just organize myself, stepping in this role of director of fundraising. So thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for the time. I am definitely leaving with some ideas on how to organize myself. So thanks so much for your time, Sam. And
all right, you're welcome.
Yeah. Bye.
Hello.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah, I learned a lot, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to sit in on this. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you for all that you all do. I mean, that's why we're here more than anything else.
I guess I'll just ask if you have the time, for a nonprofit that is just getting started.